America should move on from Epstein-Trump. U.S. proposes critical minerals trade bloc aimed at countering China. End of U.S.-Russia nuclear pact, a grave moment. UN chief. EU envoys agreed details of €90 billion loan for Ukraine. Trump suggests softer touch needed on immigration. The U.S. Justice Department has completed its review of millions of documents tied to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking investigation, concluding that there is insufficient evidence to bring new criminal charges. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the files contain extensive emails, photographs, and correspondence, but none that clearly support additional prosecutions. Despite the federal review ending, the controversy is far from over. The House of Representatives is continuing its own investigation, with former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton expected to testify later this month, after lawmakers threatened contempt proceedings. Victims and some members of Congress are also calling for more transparency, arguing that additional documents may still exist. President Donald Trump has urged the country to move on from the scandal, noting that no findings implicated him and reiterating his denial of wrongdoing. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has announced plans to form a preferential trade bloc with allied nations to secure supplies of critical minerals, key materials used in semiconductors, electric vehicles, and advanced weapons. The proposal includes setting minimum reference prices for minerals and using tariffs to prevent cheaper imports from undercutting domestic producers. While China was not directly named, officials made clear the effort is aimed at reducing reliance on a supply chain heavily dominated by one country. More than 55 nations attended the talks in Washington, including India, Japan, Germany, Australia, and South Korea. The United States is also pursuing separate agreements with partners such as Mexico, the European Union, and Japan to strengthen global supply networks. The initiative follows the launch of Project Vault, a U.S. strategic stockpile backed by billions of dollars in public and private funding, reflecting growing concern in Washington over mineral security. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is urging the United States and Russia to quickly negotiate a new nuclear arms agreement as the New START treaty reaches its expiration. Guterres warned that, for the first time in more than 50 years, the world could be left without binding limits on the nuclear arsenals of the two largest nuclear powers, a situation he described as a grave threat to global security. Originally signed in 2010, the New START treaty capped each country's deployed strategic warheads at 550 and helped reduce stockpiles by nearly 30% compared to earlier limits. It also permitted on-site inspections, though these were suspended during the COVID-19 pandemic and never resumed. The UN chief stressed that decades of arms control progress are now at risk and cautioned that the likelihood of a nuclear weapon being used is at its highest level in decades. European Union ambassadors have approved the framework for a €90 billion loan to Ukraine, aimed at covering much of the country's financial needs for 2026 and 2027 as it continues to defend itself against Russia's invasion. The agreement, reached during a closed-door meeting in Brussels, allocates roughly two-thirds of the funds to military assistance, with the remaining third designated for Ukraine's general budget. Under the plan, Ukraine is expected to purchase most defense equipment from suppliers within the European Union or partner countries. However, exceptions may be granted if urgent military needs cannot be met by those sources. The package still requires approval from the European Parliament. Officials hope the process will move quickly so the European Commission can begin raising funds and deliver the first payment as early as April. U.S. President Donald Trump says a softer touch may be needed in immigration enforcement, even as his administration confirms that mass deportations will continue nationwide. The remarks come after federal officers fatally shot two protesters in Minneapolis last month, sparking widespread outrage and large demonstrations. Officials announced that 700 federal agents will be withdrawn from Minnesota, though roughly 2,000 officers will remain as immigration operations continue. Authorities say increased cooperation with local jails, allowing officers to detain suspects there rather than on the streets, has reduced the need for personnel. Local leaders called the reduction a step in the right direction, but urged the federal government to scale back enforcement more quickly and launch investigations into the shootings. Trump described the incidents as very sad and said they should not have happened, while also voicing strong support for law enforcement agencies.